All right, it's 1 o'clock. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm in charge of documentation at Alpha Software, and I'm joined today by Scott Allen, who is in charge of all things looking pretty right now and some of our marketing materials, and he's going to be helping me today with today's webinar. Both Dave and Dion are not here, as you may have already figured out. So I am in charge and Scott's in charge, and we're hoping that you will enjoy today's presentation. So today, I'd like to talk about something that I talk about a lot. Hold on a sec. There we go. And that's styling in Alpha Anywhere. Before I get into that, though, briefly, I just wanted to mention that the Xbasic guide, which we have talked about in the last 2 webinars, is available online at this URL. Go ahead and download it, check it out. It's a good intro resource for people who are new to Xbasic, don't know how to use it, or want to up their skills, or just want to have a handy reference laying around of the language itself. So definitely check that out. In fact, let's go there right now. This is the guide. It's a very long guide. I've made a few more updates for some recommendations from a few people. So the page count's gotten longer, but it still has the same amount of content in it. Definitely check it out. And we go from the very beginnings of what is the language itself, walk you through a little interactive window tutorial to get you familiar with that, and then get all the way down into topics such as working with SQL data, using portable SQL queries, calling Xbasic in your applications through AJAX callbacks, and then some information about where you can go to learn more information. So back to today's presentation. Styling applications is something I've talked about numerous times. We've done a number of presentations on it. I've done a DevCon presentation on this, and we talk about this a lot, but it's still something that keeps coming up. A lot of people have a lot of questions about how do I make my app pretty? How do I change a font, a color, a width, border, add a border, remove a border, all these types of things. So in today's question and answer session with you guys, it's really going to be a little bit of me asking you some questions, and then hopefully you asking me some questions at the end, so that we can address anything that may be confusing. I'm going to go over basics today of the tools that are available to you, and kind of talk about how, when you should use them and when they're appropriate, and what they kind of do. I'm not going to get into subjects such as how do I change like the padding on a panel to be bigger or smaller. We're not going to get into that too much unless something easy pops up. It's more like I just want to give you an overview of what you have available so that you have a good understanding of what's out there. Because I think part of the confusion that people have right now is that they don't know where to go. But that's an assumption I made. And so in order to validate my assumption, I wanted to ask you guys a few questions. So we're just gonna go through these one at a time. First, if you guys don't know where it is, you're gonna type in the questions box for me so that I can see how you feel about these things. First, on a scale of 0, where 0 means I have no idea how to style anything, and 5 is I'm a total expert and you feel like you don't need to know anymore, just go ahead and rank yourself. I want to see how people feel about their skills. All right, it looks like most of you feel not very confident at all. I see a lot of 1s. I see some people who decided that half is a valid answer. Very sneaky. So it sounds like a lot of you just don't really feel like you have very good skills at all in Alpha Anywhere styling your applications. Though props to a few of you who are almost out of 5. Wow, that's cool. All right, so it gives me a good idea where a lot of you guys are at. My next question for you is, what would you like to learn more about styling your apps? And this could be anything from like, I want to learn more about how CSS works to I want to learn how to define custom colors or a custom theme. Just something something you wish that you kind of understood a bit better. And I know this one's going to take a little bit longer to answer for some of you, so I'll give you a few more seconds. And those who are just joining, the current question that I'm asking is, what would you like to learn more about regarding styling apps in Alpha Anywhere? Is there a specific, yeah, on the slide. There's a specific thing. So it looks like you guys are split pretty. So we've got about a third of you want to learn more about CSS. Another third of you want to learn how to change the theme or tweak the theme. And then a few of you just want a general overview. All right, and then I'm gonna go next slide. This is the last question. Where are you getting stuck? When you're going in to style your applications, where are you getting tripped up? And go ahead and type that answer to the question in the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. All right. So while the rest of you put in your answer, oh, real brief quick check. Can you hear me? I assume you can hear me because you guys are answering my questions. But I just wanted to communicate here briefly with Scott. Scott, if you anytime you want to chime in,
we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, anytime you want to chime in, just chime in. All right.
All right.
Thanks. All right. So I know this took a little bit to get set up, but this is good information for us to have and for me to have, so that I know how to direct this webinar and future webinars. So from what I've gathered here, you guys have a low knowledge in general about styling apps in Alpha Anywhere. And a lot of you want to know more about either themes or like a general overview of the tools that are available. And then where you're getting stuck at. From what I've seen right here, a lot of you are getting stuck in CSS or knowing what to do. So I don't know if my presentation today will answer all your questions. I know it won't answer all of your questions, but this is a good start. So now that I've asked you some questions, I want to talk to you briefly with another, I don't know, 20 slides here about styling in Alpha Anywhere and styling apps in general. So let's start this slideshow on the current slide. All right, so before I get into this too much, I just wanted to go over a few quick terms. Style is what we use to describe how an app looks. It's not the content. It's not the text on the screen. It's the color of the text. It's the font. It's the spacing around the text. It's images, not images. It's things like just the spacing of everything. So when you hear style, that's what we're going to refer to. And around styling, we have two languages that are available. There's CSS, called Cascading Style Sheets, and it is the language used to define styles in HTML. And just for clarification, in Alpha Anywhere, both web and mobile apps are styled using CSS, and SAS, which stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets, which is an extension of CSS that lets you do more things like create functions or nest rules or add variables that makes it easier for you to maintain your themes as you build them from the low level. And it allows us to do some cool things like provide you a one-click option to change a color globally throughout your application. So within Alpha Anywhere, a web theme is what we call a style in Alpha Anywhere, and it's a collection of SAS, CSS images such as SVG icons or font icons and JavaScript, and all of that is combined together to style your app. And right below that, I've got SAS theme, and this is just another term for Alpha Anywhere web theme. It's something you're going to see in the application, but both of these things, web theme, SAS theme, they apply to an Alpha Anywhere theme currently. So web themes are used to style both web and mobile applications, which I've already mentioned that. We ship several pre-built variations of our web themes. Our base web themes include Alpha, Android Light, Android Dark, and iOS. Alpha is the newest one. Android Light, Android Dark, and iOS are a little bit older. And only the Alpha theme has variations, of which there are 17. You customize styles in Alpha Anywhere using CSS and SAS. We have a wide range of tools to help you do that. Some of those tools are builders, where you just select some settings to set something like a font color or a padding. But others require you to actually write the CSS. So we're going to go through all those tools today, and just to kind of give you like a broad overview of how these tools work. On the left-hand side of the screen here, we have tools that globally affect your application. And on the opposite side, we have tools that locally affect a control. So things that are going to globally affect the style would be making changes in the web theme builder, creating and using an inherited style, making or changing style tweaks, or using color palettes. These are going to provide changes throughout your whole application that just affect everything in your project. In the middle here, we have sub-themes, which we'll talk about, and also component CSS. Component CSS can be a local modification, but it can also globally affect the theme, and we'll talk about that a bit later. And then all the way on the right, we have control properties, so things like width or height or color, those very specific settings for a control CSS, which is separate. That's where you've defined some sort of CSS or a class name that is assigned to the generated output of your control, the HTML that we create for your application. That's embedded inline, as well as inline CSS, which when I say that, I mean like you've opened up a freeform control and you've typed in some HTML and you've inlined some CSS right there and you're just manually adding it. So that's what that refers to. I feel like that last one's a little self-explanatory, so we're not going to get into that one too much. But starting from the top and working our way down to the most local thing, we're going to talk about global changes. So things that globally change your theme. And when I say global, I just mean global to your project, not necessarily the entire workspace, depending on how you've defined a custom theme. So you have style tweaks, which will tweak the base theme that you've chosen. So if you're using Alpha and you create a style tweak to change all of your buttons to have a border, all of your buttons in the entire application will use that style tweak, no matter what UX component or grid that you're using. Color palettes globally change the theme, the web theme. They're currently only available for Alpha. An inherited theme is a way to create a global theme for your application, as well as creating a custom theme. The major difference between those two is inherited theme is going to be based off of something existing, while a custom theme stands all on its own and all the code, the colors, the images, everything associated with that theme stands as its own package. So when we talk about a web theme in Alpha Anywhere, the theme itself is composed of two large pieces, and those are parts and variables. These are the things that we've created to kind of build a structure around styling an Alpha Anywhere app. So parts have properties. Well, back it up. Parts are a control or a component. And because I feel like this is a little confusing without a picture, we're just going to go in here and I'm going to pop open the web theme builder real quick here. And we'll talk about this. So this here is the web theme builder, and I've opened up a web theme that I've created locally to the project. This theme is only available in my project. If I wanted to make it available across my entire workspace, I would save it globally. That would make it available to the entire workspace. So it's got two components to it. The web theme builder has an adjust tab where you can see all of the parts in the theme, such as the UX component, the tabbed UI, as well as things such as the control bar or the ever popular button way down here. This button is a part. Over here on the side, we have our variables. So these are variables that have been exposed to you that you can modify. Any change to these variables here will affect the project, the entire theme. So change your accent color. Let's make it green. That variable changes the whole theme. On the code tab is where you're going to find the parts. So the parts are over here on the right-hand side in this map section, and they are general grid, UX, tab, tree, edit, button split, slider, switch, scroller. These different parts map to controls or components in your application. And styling of these parts consists of properties that assign class names to various parts of that part itself or various sections, as well as images that may be relevant. If you take a look down at the list, there is offsets and size information in here. But this editor over here on the left-hand side, you can click on it and it will show you specifically when you select that item what property that maps to over here on the right-hand side. And all of these properties define that style for that list. Lost my slide here. An important thing about parts is that they can be nested. I can put a button inside of a control bar, but in my theme, the control bar and the button are different parts. And when talking about nesting things, the reason I want to bring this up is that we have the ability to preview parts in parts by assigning a wrapper class name. And this, we're just gonna see if I can remember. I think it was panel header. Okay, so in here you can see how a part nested another part would look. So panel header is a class name for a panel header, and I know that just because I've been working with styles for so long. But if we go look at, there we go. If we go look at something like panel layout, it says header class name, panel header. That's the wrapper class that you want to define up here. So, and just for, whoop, I don't want it to do that. Oh boy, it won't let me do that. Okay, we'll just leave it capitalized. So The wrapper class changes the preview, so I could see what things would look like if they're inside the panel header. The advantage of doing this is you could do stuff like pull up your buttons, and now you see how that would appear if you placed a button inside a header. That underlined, dotted, and solid behavior, that's the button part nested inside the panel header part. So knowing full well that I've probably confused a few people, I'm going to take a quick pause here and make sure you guys are following me.
We have a question about where do I find the theme builder?
That is a great question, and I apologize for not pointing that out early on. The Web Theme Builder can be accessed from the Web Projects Control Panel under More, Open Web Style Builder, and then selecting, hold on a sec, I need to be in my default style for this. Go into Open Web Style Builder, and then selecting a system style, which it's going to ask you to copy either locally or globally, or selecting a local style you may have already created. And that's going to open the Web Theme Builder. And I apologize, my cats are in the background making a lot of weird noise. So while Alpha goes out to lunch here, I'm going to go back here to the presentation. So just to recap, parts are a controller component. They can be nested in other parts. They're defined by a set of properties that include colors, CSS class names, fonts, spacing, images, etc. They can be nested. They're defined on the code tab. And the other thing to note is that all parts, with the exception of the general part, can have subthemes. And every part has one subtheme called base, and base is the default. Variables are Sass variables under the hood, and they are properties that we've exposed on the Adjust tab in the Web Theme Builder that you can use to quickly adjust, make visual changes to your theme, such as changing the colors or the fonts.
Sarah,
Yes.
we have a question. Someone was wondering, what happens if I screw something up and want to restore the defaults?
That is a great question. So let's continue through the presentation here. So I've talked a little bit about a web theme, the Web Theme Builder, the parts of a web theme. And I kind of want to talk about a little bit more about things like sub-themes and style tweaks and that kind of stuff, which I hope probably will answer your question. So when you go to customize a theme, what a lot of people will do is they'll just copy a system theme such as alpha and then change the theme. But that is just one way to change the theme. And I argue it isn't necessarily the best way to change the theme because it is a local style sheet that, should we decide to change the system theme in the future, won't inherit those modifications. So the other ways to customize your theme and make those changes are through using things such as subthemes, style tweaks, color palettes, or creating an inherited theme. Subthemes are reusable variations. You would want to create a subtheme if you wanted to have a different look and feel for something such as a list or a button that was different from the default styling, the core styling, the base styling, but you weren't going to use it as your main look. It's something that you want to have in a few other places. So using something like a sub-theme to create that is a great way to add what you want that is reusable without affecting the entire theme. They are stored in the web theme, so they're, in a way, they're kind of global, but they only affect the controls to which they've been applied. And right here, we've got a few examples. So button base in the alpha theme looks like this if it had a darker color. But here are some sub-themes of button base. This is button raised. It's got a drop shadow and a solid fill. And then subtle is just this white and gray version. The list control also has sub-themes. I'm going to close alpha here and get it started again. And so do panels. And I believe the control bar might have a few. Anywhere. All right, so let's go back to that web theme builder, web style builder into the more drop down. I'm going to open up beta here, which is actually a copy of alpha. And we're going to go take a peek at list. And so right under list here, we have base. This is the subtheme. There are other subthemes in here. There's aligned, which creates a horizontal line between each item. There's a subtle version where everything's kind of gray. And then a subtle lined version, which has the gray and the lined. These are all variations I can apply to the list control using the subtheme property. So if I open up, I think I have an existing one. No, I don't. So if I create a new UX component here and add a list control to it, going to controls, data controls. I can't see it. There it is. List. Just click OK. Double click the control. I'm going to insert some static data real quick. And just pop that in there. Open working preview. This is the default. This is the base sub theme for the list in the alpha theme. You can go in here on the list properties and actually select a different sub theme right here at the top. So we could choose subtle. Okay. Save this real quick. And wait for that to render. Or not. There it goes. So now it's got that subtle gray color. You can create subthemes through the UX properties. There's an option in here to do that. Using the style subthemes and CSS tweaks option, you can click add a subtheme. It's going to ask you what do you want to add. You could say list box, and it will also ask you if you want to copy something. That if there's one of these subthemes is kind of close to what you need, but you just want to make a few changes, I highly recommend copying it. Or even if they're way off base, copying the base one or something similar to what you need is a good way to get started. Click OK. So in this particular dialog, this is what you're going to get at the end. You're going to have this big block of JSON and then nothing on the CSS tab, which is an okay way to create a subtheme. A much easier way, though, is through this web theme builder, where you can come down here and click this duplicate button for the current selected, or for the current part, and then through here pick what you want to create. and up here it shows you new subtheme 2. You've got all the preview of all the states that this list could have. Down here you have your properties, and then at the bottom here is where you would add your code. Another way to make changes to a theme is through style tweaks. A style tweak is more global change. You're adding CSS that's going to overwrite the theme itself, and that style tweak is stored as a separate file, basically external to the theme and external to your component in a special folder inside your project. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to make a new UX component. I'm going to pick 2-panel responsive layout here and just go with the default one. And then I'm going to change the style over here back to alpha. And because I added that subtheme earlier. Oops, I clicked on the wrong button. I clicked on the edit subtheme or edit theme in builder button. Because we had added I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Because we had added that style tweak using the style subtheme in CSS tweaks here, that created a tweaks folder. It created a tweak for the alpha theme. So any changes that I make here in the edit style builder now are going to be a style tweak once I've created that. Now, if you don't create the tweak using that edit create subtheme or CSS with the tweaks property, try opening the style using this edit and style builder may ask you to copy the theme first to your local or global style location. So the order of operations to tweak a style and get that style tweak file created is to first edit, either coming in here and creating like a dummy class, like blank, and saving it so that the file will be created. Color transparent. So that will be created, or through any other means. I'm not entirely totally 100% sure of all the different ways to make a style tweak file, but that's the easiest way to do it. And then once you've done that, when you go into the web theme builder, you'll be editing the alpha theme. And I'm going to close all these windows real quick because I am getting a little bit confused about what is open right now.
And our primary reason for tweaking version instead of just making the copy in the style builder is because the tweak now is adjustable, or if changes to the style happen later, the tweaks will stay in play, and the rest of the style will change along with those style changes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So with a style tweak, and we were batting 1,000 today on crashing Alpha Anywhere. With the style tweak, you can use it to basically make all your adjustments to a system theme like the Alpha theme that you want. And then at some later date, we make a change, we add a control, we do something, we add a new component type or whatever, and update that web theme with all of the CSS needed for that to render in a somewhat reasonable way. You're going to get that automatically. Whereas if you'd copied it and then made your changes, you're not going to get that automatically. You may have to manually add it, which is fine. Creating a custom theme by hand is totally fine. So it's just something to be aware of when you do that. So that's what a style tweak is. And I'm a little bummed out today, guys, that this keeps crashing on me. So
The
I must
perils of
be
live demo.
perils of live demo indeed. Yeah. So style tweaks, they affect the entire project. They're stored in the project. You can add sub themes to them. You can add CSS to them. You can also use Sass in them. Sass is fully supported in a style tweak. And then another way to sort of change your whole style is to use a color palette. And a color palette is a type of style tweak. The color palettes in Alpha Anywhere map to those color properties that we saw on the Adjust tab in the Web Theme Builder. And it's just a color change. And we have a number of color palettes available for the Alpha Web theme. I don't think there are any color palettes available for any other theme. They are stored in your project. They affect the entire project. If you apply a color palette, it's across the board for the whole project. But you can create your own. So you can use the ones that we've created, or you could define your own and save it. And then that would make it available for use elsewhere. So that's one way you can globally change how your application looks really quickly without too much effort. And the nice thing about color palettes is that they don't require you to understand any CSS or Sass. And you will find those color palettes on the Properties tab in the UX Properties section for UX component. The style name's got to be alpha, but if you go into that color palette's property, you will see we have blue, coffee, dark, magenta, purple, and slate. There's a preview option where it'll show you what those colors are. And you can also create your own. So in here, you can click on each of these colors, and you can change all of these to whatever you want them to be, and then you can save that new color palette. And that will become available for you in the future when you go to select color palettes. So I'm just gonna click on manage here. The color palettes themselves are stored outside of your workspace. They're stored inside the, what is this? C program data, alpha software, versions, installations, program files, color palettes, alpha. They're stored here. So they're gonna be available to all of your workspaces, all of your projects. The color palette changes the style for the whole project, but the ones that you create and save are available to everything that you are building. So if you've got some sort of color theme that you're constantly recreating, save it as a color palette so you don't have to keep making it over and over and over again.
Now, are the palettes, after a palette has been created, is that information, the code, still available in the Web Theme Builder under the code tab?
Color palettes are not saved on the code tab. They're actually JavaScript, a JSON file format.
Okay.
So
they're
not
CSS.
They're a JSON format that maps the color name to the Sass variable defined in the theme. So in alpha, there's a variable in the style called forColor, and it has a value. And what that color palette does is just define the value to assign to that variable in the theme.
Okay. Because normally the Sass variable theme color themes, they're there in the CSS code at the top of the code tab typically, correct?
If you've copied the base theme, yeah, we try to define all those variables at the top so that they're easy to find. But in terms of like color palettes, that color palette actually goes into the style tweak, and the style tweak is applied to the theme after it's loaded, so it overwrites those values.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. So in the same vein as style tweaks, we also have something called an inherited theme, and all an inherited theme is a name style tweak. It can be saved locally in the project or globally for the entire workspace. and it has to be based on an existing web theme. So it has to be based on like alpha or a custom theme you've built from scratch. You can't build an inherited theme on an inherited theme. And in the web theme builder, the way you will know if you are working with an inherited theme is it will say up in the title bar the name of the theme based on the base theme that it's inheriting from. So in this little example here, this is Alpha Slate based on Alpha. Alpha Slate is a variation on the Alpha theme. All of our variations on the Alpha theme are inherited themes. And sort of the advantage to creating an inherited theme as opposed to just doing style tweaks is that because you've given it a name, you can then apply it to other components or even other projects if you've saved it globally. Whereas with a style tweak, it's just that project. And the only way to get that style tweak into another project is to copy it manually. So that's sort of the advantage of inherited themes. And inherited themes allow you to do things like extend the theme or just totally redo it without losing any of the updates that may come down the road for future features. So starting to drill down kind of more locally, I wanted to talk about component CSS. Component CSS is local CSS definitions defined in your component inside your grid or your UX component. It affects the component, but it also applies globally to the entire app when the component has been loaded. So you can overwrite properties in your alpha theme using component CSS. Keep in mind that if you do that, it will affect everything that gets loaded in that page or screen with that component. If the component is just going to stand alone on its own page, it's fine. It won't affect other components that are on other pages if you've got things overriding that, the base theme in your component. One of the nice things about component CSS is that we do have a CSS builder for you so that you can change properties or add classes pretty easily. So if we go down here and we locate local CSS definitions in our UX component here and open that up, we get the CSS editor. It's got 3 tabs. It's got a design tab, a code tab, and a preview tab. Nothing on the preview because there's nothing on design. If you want to add a new selector is a term for adding a CSS class or some sort of selector such as the pound sign followed by a name would be the ID of a control. So you could actually create a specific style for a very specific control based on its ID. So on the design, you select add selector, insert, kind of offers some ideas, some special helpers for what you could insert here. HTML tags, pseudo classes, as well as special characters such as the period, which means class. You need to include that period or the whatever the ID hashtag or separators when you create this selector. Otherwise, it won't be created as a CSS class or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. But after you've added that, you are then presented with this property pane here. And in it, we've got a lot of different properties that you can choose from to create your style. So this is a little easier to sort of work with. If you're new to CSS and you're not really sure what's out there, maybe don't go after style tweaks in the web theme builder. Maybe start here. Maybe start with local CSS definitions and just experiment with what's here to kind of get an idea of what's going on and build up your theme from there, or at least get your feet wet. So this is great. If you ever want to know what the code was generated for your class, you can just click on this code tab. It just shows you what it's going to be putting into your application when it's loaded. And there's a lot of power in here. You have access to that color picker that keeps popping up. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with this. I love this new color picker. It's got saved palettes in it and some awesome tools. You can load images into it and pick colors from images. But yeah, you have access to that. And a lot of the most common CSS properties. There are some properties that aren't going to be here. Some of the newer ones that came out with the CSS 3 standard may not be listed, but this is enough to get you started. So these will be loaded in. These definitions will be loaded in when the component gets loaded in. And because they're loaded last, they're going to overwrite any other CSS that you have in your application. A step lower from that is control CSS. And when I say control CSS, I'm actually talking about lists, view boxes, control bars, controls that have CSS stored in the definition. So right here, we've got this picture. If you look all the way on the right here, it says CSS. There's a CSS tab in this list builder. And within there, it's got control level CSS. Control level CSS is namespaced to the control. It can only affect that control. It's not going to override other class names that you may have in your component CSS or in the web theme. This is so that you can style specifically that list or view box or control bar to exactly what you want and copy it around all over the place, share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers, and be confident that it's not going to have adverse effects that just blow away a lot of work that somebody else has done to style your project on a more global level. And I just want to point this out that the list Kanban layout, which I think was this one, that I created. No, it's not. I'm going to close this real quick. We're not going to save it. I'm going to go over here to my styles, list Kanban example, pulse effect off. So in a list control, if you create a list with a Kanban layout and you choose one of our predefined templates here, such as this one down at the bottom, we actually will insert the CSS for that layout into the list itself. So this list here has been configured with this template down here. And just to go through all the explanation of what is involved in this template, it's got two components. It's got the CSS that we've defined here for the columns and the individual columns. But in addition to that, there is a set of color settings, the styling of the color, which is actually defined as JavaScript in the color JavaScript. And in this specific list, I just copied out this default example code and pasted it down here because I picked, when I set this up, my data source, I selected the sales pipeline for Kanban list sample data, which works with that sample code in the Kanban properties. And for this particular list here. So if we look at that color JavaScript is where it's pulling down these colors, but the rest of the CSS is all defined on that CSS tab in the list. So this is an example of a control that has control level CSS in it. And you're using this in other places, such as the ink control. You just don't necessarily know that that's what's happening because we've kind of done most of the heavy lifting for you on the styling. And then, so that's control CSS. And then to talk about other controls such as text boxes or labels or checkboxes or drop-down boxes, those have styling at the most local level defined through properties and through CSS properties. So they're things like width and height properties are defined in the control. They're just stored they're destroyed. They're stored in the control. They are either individual properties such as width and height, or it can be a more general property such as style, class. Other properties you may see are inline style or class name. And this just refers to inline CSS or a CSS class name applied to that control when it's rendered. So that's the most local. And in terms of that big picture back here at the top, when you are trying to work in something, say you've got a theme or a style that you want to incorporate, maybe you want to incorporate in your business colors, or maybe you want everything to look a little bit smaller. One way to try to work your way to a web theme that incorporates everything that you have is to start with Control CSS and tweak things until you get them just right. Copy all that inline local style or inline CSS out, put it into a class name in the component, and then move things up as you go along. And that will eventually get you to having your own theme. So, with about 7 minutes left, I wanted to open this up to questions.
Great. We do have a few questions.
All right.
Yeah, let's see where to start. A good one was one that just came in just now, which was, let's see, we have, well, actually, let me step back just a little bit. There was one where maybe a little more intricate, but certainly interesting. Is there a technique to allow users to select a theme? So
Is
that a
there a
user can
way to
adjust the style?
dynamically apply the style at runtime?
Yeah, through user input of some sort, yeah.
The answer is yes, but
Okay.
off the top of my head, I actually can't describe how to do it, but it is doable. And we'll have to dig more into that and talk about that more.
Something for another presentation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something for another presentation. It does get a little bit tricky. I don't know. So just thinking off the top of my head, when we load your components and stuff, they're loaded into an A5W page. And one way you could accomplish that is at a very, very high level, store the user's preferred theme, whether it be alpha, blue, or whatever, as either like an extended user information thing in the database, or maybe they pick it at runtime. It's always at runtime. So you store it in a session variable so that then you can then later read that session variable to determine where to load your style from. So at a very, very low level, and we're just gonna make a quick page here. Oop, no, not like that. Save page, whatever, save page, style page. Please work. Did it work? Oh, it did work. It just didn't open it. If you look at the source of this page that I just created, right here, we've got this alpha 5 temporary code start will automatically blah, blah, blah. Right here, we've got this link rel style sheet text file, C program files, alpha style.css. So alpha is the theme. You could swap that out for alpha blue or something else. Now, as far as like implementing that, there's a little bit more work that's going to have to go on there than just changing the name here. But that's sort of an idea of where you would get started, is to decide what theme you're going to use. And then you're going to have to publish all of those themes up to your application server so that Alpha knows where to find it and send it back down. Otherwise, they're going to get a completely unstyled app if you don't include them.
Okay, how about someone was wondering if you'll be sharing the PowerPoint? making that available?
Absolutely, I'll make the PowerPoint available. In case you guys didn't know this, I like to use GitHub, and I'm afraid to go there while logged in because I've got alpha build man, show more, alpha anywhere. This one, alpha anywhere styling applications. I like to put stuff up here for you guys. I will probably commit this presentation to this repository for you. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to find the chat box and paste that link in there for you. So that's where you can find some past examples of style demos that I've done. And then while I'm pasting in the URLs, I did see that somebody asked for me to paste in the PDF link for the guide. So that's for you too. But I will add this here. I'll just dump it in here for you guys. If you want me to email it to you, send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com and we will email that to you. But for sure, I want to make this available to people.
Excellent. We also had another question. As someone asked if we have anything new in the future regarding new themes or simplifying the styling process and future updates that we know of right now.
In future updates that I know of, I don't know of anything coming down the line specifically, but it would be good for you to send your feedback to us about what it is that may be tripping you up and what it is you'd like to see so that we can get that on our radar. So part of what drives our tooling is hearing from you and hearing where you're getting stuck and hearing what you like and what you need. So definitely give us that feedback.
Right. And the place to do that feedback would be?
You can send it to guides@alphasoftware.com. You could also use the help menu within Alpha Anywhere. There's an option called Send Enhancement Request. I highly recommend using that. That goes to the development team. They'll see your request, they will look at it, and the more people who request something, the more likely it gets done.
Great. That's it. Let's see, I think we had someone at one point asking where to find the web theme builder. I think you showed that pretty well.
I did show that.
So I'm not sure if there's any other questions. If anybody has any other questions, please enter them into the chat window. We will get at those before our time runs out.
Yeah, and then just with respect to those questions I asked you guys at the beginning, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a look at some of these things you guys brought up, and we're going to see if we can either have a future webinar to address some of these things. Some of them are really good. Knowing how to create a dynamic theme that user controls, that's a really good thing to allow people to provide as either a feature or just tell you how to do it, because I know that I love customizing how my applications look, my code editors and so forth. And then some other things in here, like how do you debug your CSS and find things. That's a great topic. And then some just looking at just general, what is CSS and using CSS. I'll talk to Dion and Dave when they return, and we'll discuss if there's anything we can do there and what might be appropriate in a future webinar or even as a guide.
Great.
And then I did want to address one question I saw pop through the questions earlier. But somebody asked, what do I do if I screw up and I want to restore the defaults?
Yes.
And my answer to you is start with copies so that you can always just copy the original and go back. But if you create something and you just don't want it anymore, you just want to get rid of it, what you can do is on the web projects control panel, click that folder icon between the lightning bolt and the tiny computer. It says open project folder in Windows Explorer. And this will open up Windows Explorer to your project. And go into CSS and find that theme that you created that you don't want anymore and just delete it. It's gone. It's not there anymore. If you regret that choice and Windows didn't tell you it's a permanent deletion, you can use Control-Z to undo things in this window, which I think is really cool. Or you can go find your trash can and pull it back out. I also highly recommend that you do use source control, because using source control allows you to create these little checkpoints that you can always roll back to in case you get in too deep and things are just not working. You just want to just back up and start from the beginning. So both of these options are available to you.
Cool, cool.
All right. Well, looks like we are 2 minutes over. If you have more questions, I know I didn't answer any questions that were emailed to us through guides this week, and I do apologize to those individuals who sent us those questions. We will answer them. I will make sure Dion does that for you. But if you have any questions, do send them to guides@alphasoftware.com, and we will see you in the next webinar. Thank you.
All right.
And
Thank you,
goodbye.
Sarah.